again, guys. Today we are going to review the War of 1812 with another little text about it. And then today you're going to answer some questions about it for a grade. So remember everything we learned yesterday about the British giving the Indians weapons to attack us, Tecumseh trying to unite the Indians to fight against us, the British warships taking our sailors prisoner. That's called impressment, and making them serve as in the British Navy. What else was happening? Well, the French and the British were both blocking our ships from trading any. And well, then the British came and attacked. We declared war on them. They burned down the White House, burned part of the Congress, the Capitol building. And so then we got to the battle of the War of New Orleans with Andrew Jackson. So lots of things happened. The Star Spangled Banner written during the war. Let's read this text together today. Now, this is one of those texts that I'm going to read with you. If you don't want me to read it with you, you just want to go and read it yourself, that's fine, but I'm going to read it with you here. And it's also on the next 3 slides after this slide if you just like to read it yourself. But this is called the War of 1812. The President Washington had said many times that the young American nation needed to avoid European wars. For the first 3 decades after the Revolutionary War, the United States had managed to do that. However, England and France were at war against each other in the decades that followed the Revolutionary War. The U.S. tried to trade with both nations through this process, but there were problems, as there often were with one nation when one nation tries to trade with 2 sides that are fighting against each other. So we're trying to trade with Britain and France, but they're fighting. They don't want us trading with one another. At that time, the British Navy was the largest navy in the world with several hundred ships. The United States had a tiny navy of only about a dozen ships, but the U.S. had a lot of merchant ships that took goods across the Atlantic Ocean. Some of the sailors on those American merchant ships were British citizens. Angry that some of their sailors were working on American ships, ships of the Royal Navy began stopping American merchant ships and forcing these sailors to serve in the Navy. This was known as impressment. It started happening in the 1790s and only got worse in the first decade of the new century. Many Americans were furious about impressment. Americans, especially those on the frontier, were also angry at the British for providing weapons to American Indians who fought against them. By 1810, under the term of President James Madison, many people in Congress argued for war. The most important of these was Henry Clay of Kentucky, who became the leader of a group in Congress of congressmen known as the War Hawks. In June 1812, Congress declared war on Great Britain. At first, the war went terribly for the United States. The United States attempted a 3-part invasion of Canada, but it failed on all fronts. Fighting alongside the American Indian allies, the British captured the city of Detroit. In Alabama, a warlike branch of the Creek Indians, known as the Red Sticks, killed about 250 Americans at a frontier fort called Fort Mims. Then, as the war went on, the British made plans to attack the United States on 3 fronts: Chesapeake Bay, Lake Champlain, and New Orleans. The U.S. Army and Navy improved as the war went on. After the American victory at the Battle of Lake Champlain, the Americans retook Detroit and the British retreated to Canada. An army led by General Andrew Jackson, which included hundreds of Tennesseans, marched south and crushed the Red Sticks at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. The Chesapeake Bay invasion is something Americans didn't forget about for a long time. In August 1814, the British fleet landed on the coast of Maryland and sent troops marching towards Washington, D.C. Many people in the nation's capital panicked. Dolly Madison, wife of President James Madison, packed and took with her as many important papers and things as she could find, including a famous painting of George Washington. That night, British soldiers burned the White House and other buildings in the new capital. The invading British forces then marched to Baltimore, where a combined land and sea invasion failed. More on this later. Neither Great Britain nor the United States was really winning the War of 1812. However, in the fall of 1814, both sides agreed to end it at the Treaty of Ghent. News of the treaty came as a surprise. In fact, after the treaty was signed, but before news of it spread, an American army under General Andrew Jackson crushed the British army at New Orleans. And then just a note, You will learn more about the Battle of Horseshoe Bend and the Battle of New Orleans during your Tennessee history semester in 5th grade. So you'll learn more about that then. We're going to learn a little bit about it this year, though. All right, so that's a pretty short text for today. You've got some questions to answer on it. And you go back and find the answers in the text. Make sure you make a good grade. All right, you'll learn some more about the War of 1812.